Hello, everybody, and welcome inside another episode of JFK's World, the podcast where I introduce you to entrepreneurs that I know who are doing some amazing things in the world. Firstly, I want to thank all of you, my listeners. We are at episode 10. Now, to some people, that might not be a big deal, but to me, it's definitely a milestone that I wanted to ensure that I got to when I started this venture, this side hustle out, because I have a passion for connecting people and sharing stories. And I just know some amazing people doing some amazing things. And I hope that through the first 9 episodes, you've definitely seen some creativity that exists through people that I know and some amazing things they're doing for their communities and trying to help others and being just great, entrepreneurs and humans and people. And then for those of you that check out this podcast for the entrepreneurial insights, I promise you this episode also delivers on some good nuggets and some, not only inspiration, but some factual advice for anyone that's looking to become an entrepreneur, whether it's a side hustle or being a full-time job. So my guest on this episode is Ryan McNeill. He is a sports journalist. He is the founder of Athletes Unfiltered, and basically Ryan was a passionate, side hustle sports reporter who, he'll get into the background, but he basically identified that passion in university and kind of thought, how can I make a go of this as a career? And he'll share his story. But now he celebrated his 1 year anniversary of it being his full-time job. And so for those of you that are looking to make that transition, he's another great resource and story to share. So this podcast is going to appeal to a number of people. I think if you're a sports nut, if you're a sports freak and you always wanted to know a little bit more about what goes on behind the curtains, Ryan definitely has that experience and has those stories to tell, being a sports journalist. And then also, as I mentioned, for entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, those that are currently entrepreneurs, Ryan definitely gives some great advice and some great insights into how to get to that next level. So without further ado, let's celebrate episode 010, episode 10. Let's get into this chat with Ryan, and we'll see you on the other side. Welcome inside the podcast, everybody. Episode 010. Yes, we have made it to 10 episodes of JFK's World. And when I first started this process of wanting to start a podcast around entrepreneurs that I know, my guest today was definitely one of the people at the top of my list. We've known each other since university. I'll let him get into that in a bit about how we connected. But Ryan, thank you for being on the show. Let me just give you the platform to introduce yourself and give us a high level what entrepreneurial endeavor you are up to.
It's still funny hearing you say that I'm an entrepreneur. I love Gary Vaynerchuk and I love Patrick Bet David, I think his name is. All these entrepreneurs that I look up to. And I was a teacher for 17 years after we met. And it's only in the past year that I've really jumped full-time into this full-time into sports journalism. And it's been a wild ride ever since university
Yeah,
where
so
we
let's, I
met.
mean,
So
right? So we and Ryan, I mean, we have known each other. Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, I'm not going to age us.
almost 20 years, almost 20 years.
Okay, there, you aged us. Perfect. So I appreciate that. No, but part of the inspiring part of why I wanted to have you on the show is because you've gone from side hustle passion to passion being full time. But let's back it up. So I want to shout out. I want to give you the opportunity to share with everyone, where you're from, hometown, where we met, university. Let's shout out Jay right now. Jay Watt introduced us.
JY, they
To
introduced
both
us.
of us.
Yes.
Yes. And then any memories or embarrassing stories you want to share about our time together over the years. So why don't you start off a little bit about kind of where you're from and your educational past?
I'm from Whitby. I loved growing up in Whitby. It was a small town back when I was growing up. And when it hit 100,000, I think it was a university. That was a big deal for that town. It's not called a town, even though
Right.
it's technically a city. Went to Brock University. I loved my 4 years there. Part of me wishes I could still have a couple more years of university life. Um, and for me, I went to Brock University to become a teacher. Something I thought that I always wanted to do. And right next to the campus pub, I think it's Isaac's, if I remember correctly,
Yes, yes.
was the Brock Press. And they always had signs for free movies and free CDs. And I'm like, I like free. So I think it was first or second year, started doing free movie passes and free CDs to review. Like, this is the best thing ever. I'm growing my CD collection. I'm getting into all these new movies. And you got to take a buddy with you. And the write-ups were like 300 to 500 words for either. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. And I think it was third year worked up to Baby Blue Sound Crew
Yes.
and Jack Soul with, I think it's Hayden Neal. When they were coming through St. Catharines, got to interview them. I'm like, this is awesome. Talking to famous people and to sit down and have their attention and pick their brains and then tell their stories. I go, I love this. And then fourth year, I was like, I kind of want a little money out of this. This would be nice to have a little beer money. So I applied for the assistant or associate sports editor, got that. And then by Christmas, I forget what happened, but the sports editor either got fired or quit. But I was a sports editor. And I remember when it was time to apply for teachers college, I was like, do I want to teach still? Like, I love telling people's stories. And I love interviewing people. And I love going to sports. And this is it's going to be my job. This is going to be my career. And I'm like, thankfully, applied to teachers college, went to Lakehead for a year. But when I was teaching my first year, I was like, I really miss this. Started working with a .com for basketball, and everything kind of just slowly over 15 years snowballed in a really cool way.
And part of that was getting your media credentials with the Toronto Raptors, like your first professional media credentials.
Yeah. That was surreal. Shout out to Jim LeBombard if he's listening at the NBA front office now. He was the Raptors PR guy. And he gave me credentialed for, it was called hoopsworld.com back in the day. That was great. So I was part of a team. I was the young guy. I had a bunch of people who'd been credentialed before. I could learn from them and ask questions. But it was surreal as a kid growing up in Ontario. I remember going with my dad. I want to say it was the Boston Celtics Philadelphia 76ers game back at the old Maple Leaf Gardens.
Okay. Yeah.
So this was when I guess the league was putting out these feelers is basketball going to be big in a hockey crazy town?
Right.
So that was, I feel it was in high school. So this was well before the Raptors were even granted the expansion team. So to be able to part of the Raptors, and I think at that time I was the only or one of maybe two at the most online digital media. It was still very new. And the whole blog thing was just starting. I don't think even like the Toronto Star, for example, had much of an online presence at that time.
Right.
So I'm very fortunate that Jim took a chance on me, gave me the credentials. And then after a year of working for Hoops World, I was like, I want to do my own thing. And he was awesome for giving me full season credentials. Every year he was here with the Raptors.
Awesome. So before we get into kind of that next step, because I know you did get back into teaching and this passion became what you were doing on the side, as well as being a full-time teacher. But one thing that I remember, and I hope you, because I've never heard the story from you, I've only heard it from Jay, but the time that you went to the Raptors Open tryout to document the experience and what you wanted to get out of it and what ended up happening.
100%. Yeah. So Jay went with me and he thought this was the funniest thing ever. So I think it was before there was a G League and before it was even the Raptors 905. If memory serves correct, it was for the Idaho Stampede. And so I got a hold of the Idaho Stampede coach or their PR guy. I'm like, hey, I cover the Raptors. And at that time, I was like 25, 26. Like I was playing Monday Night Basketball still. Like I was playing with younger guys. Like I felt I should be able to run up and down a basketball court, even though they're professional athletes. a little younger than me, like early 20s, like 21, 22, 23, I thought I could run up the court. I can do these drills. Like it's not going to kill me.
Right.
Sure enough, I didn't do a full tear of my Achilles, but it was a partial tear. And I remember I was going up. I feel like it was like a 3-man weave, and I went up for a layup, and I'm like, shoot, someone kicked me. Why? How's someone kicking me doing a layup? And I landed, and I couldn't walk.
Right.
And Jay's laughing at me. He's filming me, and he's documenting this. It's on YouTube somewhere.
Right.
And I was like, so yeah, I even in my mid-20s, and I'm in horrible shape now, so I can't even imagine doing this now.
Trying that now, yeah.
But I tried, and not the story I wanted, but it was a great YouTube story. It was
Right.
fantastic for that.
I mean, and that's the thing, right? Like so many of us are like, oh, we can do that. And full credit to you again. Like, you gave it a shot to document what the experience is for these players, like these hopefuls. But I know that your time got cut short because you literally, yeah, like partially tore. And when Jay told me that, I was like, I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my gosh, like, and now.
And it's funny. So I hope I'm not messing his name up, but his name was Brian Gates. He was
Okay.
the coach at the time. So he comes over, he's all worried. And and I'm someone who he will never forget. So when he was working with different NBA teams, he would see me in the sidelines. He'd always come over and say, hey, how are you doing? And he goes, I still tell people about that tryout and that journalism. Yeah. And I go, not the kind of infamy I want, but it's cool to have this connection with now an assistant coach in the NBA. Sacramento, New Orleans were two teams he's been assistant coach with.
Right.
But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I just wanted to take a trip down memory lane there, just to, again, putting yourself out there in pursuit of the story, which I thought was amazing. And just the left turn that it took, but how you're right, it's on YouTube, and how you can look back now with a great story and great memories. So, okay, so let's dive back in. So you have the media credentials, but you're also now pursuing teaching. So if you could, it's a multi-layered question here, but tell me about what was the thought process around doing both, essentially. Like, how were you able to balance? What was the balance like between the two? And did your worlds collide? Were you able to keep them separate? Because I know there's some people listening that have that tough time getting started with a full-time job to do a side hustle, myself included. So maybe just tell us a little bit about your journey, having those media credentials and being a journalist, but also having a full-time teaching career.
It's this might be a unique answer. As a Christian, I was always like, why in my 20s am I not married? And then in my 30s, I'm like, man, why am I not married yet? And then looking back, it's so great that I haven't gotten that yet, because I don't know how I do the time. Like, you're happily married, you have 2 young kids
Yes,
now.
yes.
The time is so valuable for you. So for me, a big thing is I've never been married. I don't have any kids. So when I was teaching, for me to hop on a plane and go away for a weekend and to cover a game, no big deal, because as a teacher, evenings and weekends are mine. So if I'm doing Raptors games locally, a couple games a month is no big deal to go down to the Air Canada Center,
Yeah, Scotiabank
ACC,
Arena, yeah.
Scotiabank, whatever they rebranded to. But so for me, there was really no excuse, because if I was teaching, I'm there early in the morning. So the late night games are tough, but suck it up. Have a nap after the
Right.
next day after work or something, right? Have a nap on the GO train. So for me, it was something I loved doing. Like, I loved teaching and making a difference, and I loved coaching. And I loved that I could hop on a GO train or hop on a plane on a weekend and go somewhere. And yes, there was a cost to those things, of my time, but financial. Like we talked a little bit off air, any entrepreneur, please get a good accountant. Learn how pursuing your passions can help save you some tax money and get stuff back, so that your spouse or your partner or whoever isn't like, you just spent X amount on the new Mac Studio, or you just spent X amount on flights, and we have these commitments. I would highly recommend getting a good accountant, because that's a big part of the equation too.
Excellent. No, that's great advice. Okay, so let's transition now. What was the process like going from side hustle to, hey, like this can happen full time. I can make a real run at this. What was that journey like? What is, was it the stars aligning? Was it happenstance? Walk us through a little bit about what that decision was like.
I have to preface this by saying I feel bad telling this part of my story, because so many people have been negative impacted by COVID,
Right.
whether it's a loss of a loved one, whether it's health conditions, careers have changed. I feel really bad. I want to share it though, because it's a testament to sacrifice and hard work and how it pays off. So with teaching, I think it was that March break when we were supposed to come back. We took a week off of school still to kind of extend things. We were, as Canadians, we weren't sure where things were.
Right.
As global citizens, we didn't know where things were. And when we came back to the virtual setting, I was doing prep coverage that year. So I didn't have the typical homeroom commitments. I only had like 2 hours a day. But on top of that, as a teacher, it was a half an hour drive to school. And I wanted to be there half an hour before the bell just to get settled, make sure everything's in place. And then I repeated that in the inverse after school. So I stayed for half an hour and then make sure everything was prepared for the next day, and then half an hour drive home. So I had 2 hours without even coaching commitments. I had 2 hours to play with. And I was like, huh. So I started learning about marketing. I started spending at least an hour a day on YouTube, learning different editing techniques. I made the switch because you, as a sports fan, I'm sure you have different people that you love. So I love Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan go for 2 to 3 hours.
Right.
I love Bill Simmons. He could easily do 2 to 3 hours on multiple different episodes in a couple times a week.
Right.
And so I always assumed, okay, I have to have long form content. And something I realized is there is this niche with my Athletes Unfiltered. You don't want the full media scrum, but if you can get the best 2 to 3 minutes, that is something that if I'm putting up, say, 10 episodes a week, there's going to be 2 or 3 episodes that a basketball fan might like or a football fan might like. And I'm not doing these things. So I've called them micropods because they're really
Cool.
quick. So if you're out walking the dog, if you're out getting groceries, you can just download them, have them going super quick. The micropods exploded because it resonated with sports fans. And even now, 2 years after we've been in COVID's been in our lives,
Yep.
I've been waiting for an ESPN or a Fox Sports or CBS Sports, someone to jump on this and have their beat writers and stuff collaborate into this and have this great content. They haven't jumped on it. So I've been very fortunate that the wave that I'm riding is
Yes.
still soaring, because weirdly, these other sports media companies haven't jumped on it, even though Spotify is like, whoa, we got to get him under contract because this is great for him and me, and we're going to split the revenue and all that kind of good stuff.
Right. That's amazing. So, were you already full time with Athletes Unfiltered before Spotify, or how did that
No,
come
the
about?
Spotify is what allowed me and gave me that peace of mind to do that. So they approached me in September of 2021, and my first day with Spotify being the ad manager or whatever, and the
Okay,
host was October 1st of 2021. So we're literally just over a year into that process.
that's
But it
amazing.
was during,
Congratulations.
thank you, it was during COVID. It's bizarre because as I couldn't go to games, as I couldn't travel, as I didn't have all this access, I was like, what was I going to do? So there's a couple of different things that even over the past year I've tried and experimented with. Some things have hit, some things have not. But the leaving teaching is like literally not even 13 months into that. And it was a big risk. Um, but one I'm so thankful and happy that I took.
Excellent. All right, yeah, and it's an amazing story to tell, being connected with Spotify like that, and that also allowed you to move to the States. So you're in Texas right now. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that decision to relocate your business as well?
It's been a wild 18 months. I think it was March of 21. Yeah, March of
Yeah.
21. I was supposed to have a lake house built. I was in a rental house. The rental house burnt down. So I lost all my possessions. I was very thankful that Jay and Jill had me stay in their basement. And then I think it was July of 2021, I moved into a lake house, which was great. And then shortly thereafter, when I was wrestling with, do I want to keep teaching or do I want to take a risk? And I'm so thankful I did, because I was with a buddy in Boston, and I think it was November of 21. And I'm like, I'm just sick of the cold weather.
Right.
I'm sick of all the politics and all the impact on my day-to-day life. I go, do I want to go to Texas or Florida? I go, yeah, I do. So I was looking at both states, and Texas has, same with Florida, no state income tax, but everything is so cheap. Like gas is literally half the price
Wow.
of what it is back in Ontario. And it's like the cost of homes. And then there's so much stuff. I don't know if culturally is the right word, but like food and then sports. Like there's so many sports teams I've been out to cover. So I made the decision to become a snowbird in
Yeah.
my 40s. Most Canadians wait to their 70s.
Right.
I jumped in line. I'm doing that now in my 40s. And so I spend the falls and the winters out here in Texas. And it's been so great. Like even my first Friday Night Lights, the Magnolia Bowl a couple weeks back, just amazing. It's one of those cool things that I'm sure we both watched TV series and the
Yes.
movie and stuff, but to actually be on I'm gonna get goosebumps. To be actually on the high school football field and just, I hope the right term is that Americana, that Texas, like you're in a different place. You're experiencing something that we didn't have back in Canada growing up.
Sure.
And it's just so amazing to have these 6 months of the year where I'm here in Texas. And then I can go back to Ontario for the beautiful, well, not beautiful spring, but the beautiful summers,
Yeah.
and see friends and family. And it's so nice to have that balance of living in both places. And again, there's more sports opportunities and more journalism opportunities here in Texas, for me at
Sure.
least.
Sure. Well, I know, we only got a few minutes left. I know you're going to get covering the Astros. It's big game for them next round, right? So,
Yeah.
but there's a few things I still want to ask you. So number one, having the platform that you've had and the scrums you've been in, the people you've been able to have on your podcasts, mini casts, do you have like a kind of top two or three that you definitely wanted to make sure you were able to um they were the reason why you got into the business, or maybe someone that kind of surprised you and gave you the time and you didn't think they were going to? So are there two or three athletes or coaches that have just kind of been an amazing part of your journey?
I loved that I had a one-on-one interview with Rod Carew, one of the all-time great baseball players. I loved talking to James Conner on one-on-one. He had a book come out maybe about a year ago, maybe two. I've lost track now. He had a book come out about his battle with cancer. I think he was at Pitt still. And he went through cancer and he beat that. And then just talking about him, about his story, was a really great chat. A talk that I wish I never had. I don't know if I've told you this story. I've definitely told some of our mutual friends. This was back when LeBron James was playing for the Miami Heat,
Right.
and obviously pre-COVID. So I honestly feel there was 40 people, between video cameras, between beat writers, just surrounded around his locker. So I had a great spot, like right next to his right. So right on the left on the right-hand side of his locker.
Right.
And I had nice post position, and he's doing his thing. And somebody came in late and was trying to squeeze in with their camera. And I don't know if they couldn't see me, if they're just being rude, and they pushed. So they pushed me, and I had to put my hand out, and I touched his locker, and I hit some of his clothes hangers.
Okay.
And he literally stopped, looked at me, and said, "What the are you doing?" I almost soiled my pants. I couldn't
Wow.
even
I had never heard
speak.
that story. No.
I couldn't even speak. And that's his whole king persona. Like, I'm king of the world. How dare you interrupt me or touch things in my locker while I'm doing media? Like, he didn't realize what was happening to me that I was doing intentionally, but just that arrogance. And so that was definitely the start of my hate relationship of LeBron James, and why I've never been a fan since. And then someone who I would love to interview is, I don't know if he's a country music artist, but he's definitely an artist, Zach Bryan.
Okay.
I've loved watching his rise over the past few years. I love that he puts out all these albums. I love that he hustles, he grinds. I love his music. I'd love to sit down with and have a beer with him, and just on or off the record, I love to interview Zach Bryan. One of those new artists. I just love his music, and I love to be able to interview him at some point.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, I'll get you out on this. I want people to be able to, because you've shared some great nuggets, some great stories. Where can people find out more? Where can they find you on social? Let us know where we can get a hold of you.
So I'm a weird entrepreneur where I have a love-hate relationship with social media. I use Reddit to publish some of my stuff, but like a lot of like my Instagram, it's just personal stuff. For podcasts, if you're a sports fan, Athletes Unfiltered. It's not the black, red, and white logo. It's the AU with the blue on it.
I'll make sure I edit it in so people can see what it looks like.
Perfect. That's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're not a sports fan, a new passion for me has been my Unfiltered Conversations podcast. So I'm not sure this is going to go live, but the week of October 17th, on the Tuesday, I dropped an interview with a neuro coach talking about neurology-based trauma and all that kind of stuff. And then later this week, I'm going to have an author talking about his book. It's loose historical fiction. John Armour was the author. I can't think of the name of the main character, but it's like it was in the USA Today, all this kind of stuff, drug deals, all these crazy, wild Texas stories.
Right.
So I love that I can talk from authors to neuro coaches. I've talked to an amputee who started in Afghanistan, lost from his knee down, and I think it was Walter Reed. He had a bunch of stuff. So Unfiltered Conversations, and then on YouTube, Eclectic Raconteur. I'll show you the link for that, so if you want to include that as well. But YouTube has been my big creative voice right now. I love telling stories through vlogs and other different things of documenting games.
Beautiful. Ryan, thank you so much for being a guest on JFK's World, the podcast. You've shared some amazing stories, some amazing insights. I hope that some more people now come across your content, because I know that I get a kick out of the insights that I've seen. I didn't know about Unfiltered Conversations, so I'm definitely going to check those out as well. So thanks for sharing that with the audience as well. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope that, when it comes time for me to celebrate another big milestone of mine, that I can have you back on, and we can update everyone on what you've been up to as well.
Thank you for the chance to chat and reconnect. And it was fun having a trip down memory lane, is just seeing what's happened over the past 2 decades and how the hard work pays off. So I just want to encourage your listeners and people watching on YouTube, baby steps, start slow, build. If you have a passion for something, if it's baking, if it's journalism, whatever you have, chase that passion, put the work in, it'll pay off.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Ryan. We'll talk soon. There you have it, everybody. Episode 010 is in the books. Again, I want to thank Ryan for being on the podcast. Ryan, his work on YouTube, on social with Athletes Unfiltered, the mini casts that he was talking about, the mini podcasts, the interviews that I've seen him do. He gets a lot of listeners. He gets a lot of people checking out his work, and he's got to that level. And for him to make the time for me to share his stories and share his insights, I'm just truly blessed and truly thankful that he took the time. So again, if you want to find Ryan, I didn't know about Unfiltered Conversations, but it sounds like that's a great new area to explore and one that he's passionate about. And then there's an Athletes Unfiltered website as well. And again, just some great stories, some great trips down, as Ryan said, memory lane. The reason why I'm doing this podcast, it's to help connect people and share their stories, because they are an inspiration to me, and I hope that they can be an inspiration to all of you, the listeners. So once again, please check out past podcasts. I got JFKsWORLD.com. I'm available on YouTube, available on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, anywhere you check out your podcasts, whether it's video form, whether it's audio form. Thank you for being a listener. Share comments if you'd like to, give me some feedback. We're 10 episodes in and the momentum is building. I already have my next few guests lined up. Again, some great entrepreneurs, some friends from my life journey. So I look forward to bringing you more stories and more entrepreneurs. And as always, this has been JFK's World, and thank you for being a part of mine.